people say that initiating divorce is a sign that that's the person ending the relationship, but that's just the person who's initiating the legal process. And the reason that women would tend to do that is because they are frequently the ones who are relying financially on the man. And if they are not receiving, so for instance, if a man is married to a woman and then cuts her off financially and leaves, he may have ended the relationship, but she has to go through the divorce process in order to start divvying the money in order for her to survive. So that's a very frequent reason. And yeah.
Okay, solid. All right, Andrew, you're up next, my man.
Yeah, the reason that you have such a high divorce rate in the West is due to no-fault divorce. It's a massive problem. And the reason that no-fault divorce was implemented to begin with is because of feminism and egalitarianism, which is completely and totally the wrong way to go about life. It's completely false. It's faux in every direction. There is no such thing as egalitarianism. It's made up tripe, and it's been pushed by a feminist agenda for roughly 200 years. And yeah, that's why you see such a high rate of divorce is due to no fault. And we know this because we can go back before no fault and we can compare. And you can see the distinction is massive. So I think that you should have merit-based divorce and that irreconcilable differences aren't good enough. And I also think that secularists probably shouldn't get married at all because it's for the religious and it has nothing to do with them. What the hell do they need to get married for to begin with? So.
There's a lot in that sentence that needs to be addressed later, but just in general, divorce is really complicated. It comes from a lot of different factors on both sides, of course. I think that a lot of factors specifically with women typically come from like having more of like a social network that you can rely on, actually being willing to take those steps, instead of a lot of dudes, I think, are just kind of like, even if they're unhappy, they just kind of like stick it out in terms of like, well, I'm supposed to be married, and if I have this like failure, if I divorce my wife, it's like a social stigma. Obviously that goes on both sides, but I think it does hit differently for dudes who are not willing to like, generally, they're kind of pussies sometimes when it comes to actually taking that step. They'll just be like, whatever, I guess I'll just die. I think the no-fault divorce thing is really fucking stupid. You saying that that's like a bad thing, because back in the day, you either just made up an excuse, like there was literally businesses that were completely built around the idea of like faking cheating allegations so you could get a divorce. So it kind of just was like it just wasn't a very efficient way to go about doing it. So it really, all it is with having no-fault divorces now just means that either you're not having to poison your husband anymore, or and you don't have to go through all these fucking hoops to just like leave, because it's not like it just worked on one side. It worked on both sides. You couldn't just like leave your wife. You couldn't just leave your husband. Like, it was not good for either side. So I just think that's very silly for you to support that.
Okay, let's go to Angela.
Yeah, so there, like, I kind of agree with Nina and Lauren. There's so many reasons why a relationship ends, and I think one of the major factors, I think men and women truly don't understand what it takes to coexist in a relationship. And though a woman is initiating a divorce, it doesn't necessarily mean she's ending it. I think there's a lot of things that are stabilizing really bad relationships, and a woman choosing to initiate or end the relationship or the divorce, it's just her deciding to, I don't know, just take care of the situation, as to a guy is probably having an affair or coping in other ways with video games, or just being a complete slob, or just giving up in life. I think that maybe like the narrative of men feeding into this egalitarian lifestyle or marriage, thinking that they can do that, but I think women are still carrying the burden of being domestically responsible in the relationship, whether it's still working and being the wife and being the mom and being all the above, while he's still harboring like traditional wife core values, which I don't really think it aligns with what we're pushing out here. So just summing it up.
Hey, Nina, did you say that the only way that men could get it, or women could get out of their evil marriages before no-fault divorce, was to poison their husbands? I just want to make sure that we're clear.
Did I say that that's the only reason or only way that they could get out? No.
Well, you know, you were concerned about the massive non-existent industries that were out trying to prove that, you know, the women were cheating. And I guess that if they couldn't get a divorce, their only option, of course, was to poisoned their husbands. That seems ridiculous to
Do
me,
you think
but
that
I'm sure
lying
that
about that?
I'm sure that you have lots of. I think that it's not something that was prevalent. Yeah.
Okay, so how would you get out of a divorce, or get out of a marriage back in the
How would
day
I?
without no fault divorce? Like
You
if
would
you
go.
wanted
You would
to
go.
leave.
You would go do what's called show cause. So you would show a cause, and then the court would grant you the divorce.
What was
Right, so
cause back
then-
then? Show of
question?
cause. What was the cause back then, Andrew?
Well, it could be any number of different factors. So infidelity could be one factor. There was all sorts of different factors. It just wasn't irreconcilable
Such as?
differences.
I feel
You
like
actually
you
had to have a
know.
cause.
Okay. So
Mhm.
a lot of those factors had to do with domestic violence. So you would have
That's one factor. Yeah.
So you had an increased amount of false accusations of domestic violence between partners, because in order to get out of their divorce, they had to have some or false accusations of cheating. And these things could have led to criminal prosecution.
No fault divorce hasn't changed that. No fault divorce hasn't changed the ridiculous allegations of cheating. It hasn't changed any of the ridiculous allegations
But you
that are
didn't
levied
need them.
that are levied at people. So the thing is that just saying that there were some isolated cases where they would make these bold claims of lies doesn't mean anything. It's like,
Well, if you're
first of
trapped in
all,
a
the
marriage-
overwhelming amount of divorces right now are due to irreconcilable differences, not due to any other factor. So I don't assume
How
that
do you know
something that's something because we
Wait,
have
how do
polling
you know
data.
that?
We have
How do
polling
you know
data.
that?
We have polling
No, we don't.
data.
No, we don't. What
Yes, we
have-
do.
So what we have is data that shows that people are filing no-fault divorces. However, you could file for a no-fault divorce, which is much easier than filing for a at-fault divorce and having to show cause, as you talked about earlier. So even if you do have just cause for a show of cause divorce, you would typically just go for a no-fault divorce. So your data is
What does that have to do with
drastically
anything?
skewed.
That literally has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. So
I
I'm
don't think
making a
you're
comparison and
restricting
saying
myself
that
because it's exactly on both
why do
sides.
you think that people who say now, men and women now, the women are saying we have irreconcilable differences and that's why we're getting divorced. So
Because it's
there's-
easier
hang
than
on,
having
let me
to say my
finish.
husband
Let me
hits me,
let
or
me
my husband
finish.
cheats on me, or I cheat on my husband.
Lauren, calm down. Let me finish my point and I'll let you talk. So you have to make the case then that before the irreconcilable differences, that people were getting divorced before this under some false pretense, which I don't think that they were. I think that they were getting divorced under the pretense of show cause, which they were supposed to be getting divorced under, right? You did something wrong. You did something which was outside of your marital vows. Because remember, you are taking a vow. Do you remember that part, Lauren?
If we were to get married, part of our vows would be you would never tell me to calm down again. But
We
go
would
ahead.
never get married. I'm happily married. I'm glad that
All
I
right,
don't
you
know
should
if
have
you
made
are,
that a
but-
part of
Possibly
your
leave her.
vows.
But
You should have
anyway,
made that a part of your vows. Don't tell women to calm down. It doesn't help in getting women to calm down.
oh no, what are you going to do? Freak out? Oh, that's terrible. But anyway, back to where I was at before I was so rudely interrupted
Oh my
by you,
God.
Lauren. I'd like to note that you still haven't actually given me anything here. So what I'm asking you specifically is, what is the problem with no fault divorce other than you want to get a divorce because you just don't like your husband anymore?
The reason that I have to issue with no fault divorce is because you have to make, in order to get a divorce, you have to make some sort of an accusation. So you have to either accuse your husband of cheating on you or of hitting you or of doing something. And a lot of this times this would lead to criminal proceedings. So if you feel drastically stuck, it puts you in a very hard, difficult position if you really need to leave. And also, even if you do have just cause, having to gather that evidence. So let's say your husband does abuse you in some manner, I'm not sure, or does cheat on you. You would then have to gather that evidence. And a lot of women don't have the means to hire a PI or to follow their husbands around.
Kind
all
of
day.
enjoying the gynocentric way that you're looking at this. It's not just the poor woman has to gather the poor woman has to gather evidence. The man also has to gather evidence. The man has to gather evidence for infidelity as well. Has to gather evidence for these things as well. They both have to show cause because they took a vow. So if you don't want to take if you don't want to take a vow, a marriage vow, then why are you getting married?
Well,
No,
probably for
I'm-
like the legal reasons, you know.
So like
tax
what?
system reasons,
Oh,
like
so you
tax
can't. So we
reasons.
can't change the
Okay,
tax
taxes and
system unless
stuff.
people are married. That's ridiculous.
And
That's
another
ridiculous.
thing that I find, okay, do you find the Constitution ridiculous? You seem like a fervent supporter of the United States and the Constitution.
Why would you say that? Based
Well,
on what?
because earlier you said that people who are not religious shouldn't be married, and it's like funny because we have a First.
What does that have to do
Amendment
with the
which
Constitution?
supports- Well, we also have a constitutional right to get married. It's
You do.
yeah, Loving v. Virginia. Yeah,
That's a
we do.
constitutional. That's a constitutional right. Which
Yes.
amendment is that?
It's what amendment? I don't think it's in an amendment. It's been
Oh,
determined.
so it's
by
not
the
in the
Supreme
Constitution.
Court.
So it's not in the
It's a
Constitution,
constitutional
Lauren.
right. It's been determined by the Supreme Court to be a constitutional right.
Okay, so
Yeah,
it's
to
not
marry
in the
to whom you
Constitution,
want.
Lauren.
Yeah, they can't. The government, the United States, cannot prevent you. It's part of your rights to life, liberty.
So is it in the Constitution, Lauren? Can you give me the amendment, Lauren?
Do you not understand how Supreme Court precedent
I-
works?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I don't think
precedent.
it-
So,
That's
like,
precedent.
For
That's
instance,
precedent.
it
The
was a
precedent can be
constitutional
overruled.
right.
Lauren,
For instance,
precedent
it
can be
was- hold
overruled.
on. For instance, it was a constitutional right to have an abortion under a case that was recently overturned. So now that's no longer a constitutional right. But
Because
as
it's
of Loving
precedent.
Virginia-
Because it's
yeah,
precedent.
exactly. So you do understand precedent.
Yeah, but
Very
precedent's
good.
not a constitutional right. So if you have a constitutional amendment, you either
I
need to
don't-
have
yes,
two.
it is. It is
Let me
considered a
finish, Lauren.
constitutional
You need to
right.
either have 2/3 of the states come together to roll the amendment back, or you need to have
That's
literally
how
an
amendment
act.
works. Yeah.
Well, if it's not
You can have
in the
other-
Constitution,
so it's the 10th Amendment. I'm
you
sorry.
said it. You
have
said
the
it's
number
in
right.
the Constitution. It's not
Yes,
in the
the 10th
Constitution.
Amendment.
You're talking
It's
about
under the
case
10th
precedent.
The 10th
That's so
Amendment.
The 10th Amendment, it says that the rights that aren't given to the federal government go to the prospective states. Lauren, what are you talking about?
No, it's the 10th Amendment says that there's a number of rights that are not specifically outlined in the Constitution. And the
Like I
Supreme
just
Court has
said.
determined under Loving v. Virginia and other
So-
cases.
So which
that
part are you disagreeing
marriage
with?
is a constitutional right. People have a constitutional right to choose whom they marry, whether they be interrace or. And then it was further in Hodges v. Overfeld with gay marriage. So people have the right to choose who they marry. That is a constitutional right.
It's not a constitutional right. It's an interpretation by the Supreme Court, and they often get overruled later. Whereas you can't, the
Until
Supreme
they're
Court can't overrule
later,
the amendment.
It is a right for anyone in the United States to get married to whom they choose, whether or not they're religious. And I find it odd, even though the First Amendment.
So then I can't advocate that there's change.
What? So you're just going to continue to interrupt me and then get upset when I interrupt you? You seem
Well,
very
it
feminine.
seems to be
It seems
impossible
like
to have a
you-
conversation with you unless it's the most long-winded diatribe I've ever heard. Try to keep
Yeah,
your
it's
points
just-
more concise.
I think it's hard for you to understand big concepts. I get that.
I'm trying my hardest. Maybe if you use small words.
Okay, I'll try from now on.
So, Andrew, are you in favor of a small government?
No.
Why?
Because small government usually is mediocre, and you need to have X amount of diplomats. You need to have X amount of statesmen. You have to represent 300 million people. In this particular case, I would actually advocate that you have far more congressmen. That way you didn't have an electoral state, which was as messed up as ours is. So that's what I would do. I would actually expand the electorate because, having only 2 senators per state is probably not a great idea, just so you know.
And alimony, your thoughts on that?
I think that in some rare instances that can be adjudicated and has been traditionally adjudicated by the church if alimony is necessary.
The church?
The church, yeah. I don't see why the state needs to become involved in a religious ceremony.
How would
Can you give me a
they have
reason?
any-
Can you give me a reason why secularists need to get married? Any of you? Like, why is that a good
Well, I would
idea?
assume because they love each other. I mean,
You
that's
can love each
probably
other
why
without
I'm-
marriage. It's a religious.
Okay, but you might have a
sacrament.
tradition in your family, like that you would want to get married.
You mean that came from the religious people in your family?
Hold on.
Probably.
I'm
Who
curious.
gives
So
a
you
shit?
want
Yes, it
to
did.
you want to take the institution of marriage and make it like completely separate from the legal institution. So you would get no tax benefits for being a married couple.
You don't
would-
need. Yeah. So just to address these one at a time, right?
Mhm.
You don't need to be married in order to address tax benefits for couples. You recognize this, right, Lauren?
I'm asking if you. I'm asking a
And I
totally
just
different
answered.
question.
I just answered your question. You
No, you
don't
didn't.
actually. You
No,
don't
you didn't.
need to be married for tax benefits because you can address the tax system separate from marriage. It's ridiculous.
Okay, but so you think that's the only so
Oh, you mean changing it?
So he's saying that the only reason that the government is involved in marriage at all is to monitor taxes, and then taxes could be monitored.
I didn't say that at all. You just straw man my
I'm
entire
trying to
argument.
She's
understand.
just asking you a question.
And I just
Fill the fuck
answered her
out, dude.
question, and then she straw manned the position.
No,
So,
I'm
like, if you want to
trying
know the
my
position,
best.
just ask, and I'll give it to you.
She was literally just doing that. Like, chill the fuck out.
No, she
Andrew.
literally wasn't drunky. She literally didn't.
Literally, I wasn't.
So anyway, back to what you were asking me, Lauren, just to give you the answer to your question.
Let me rephrase the question, if you
Okay.
don't mind. How is the government and marriage currently intertwined?
So right now they're the adjudicators. So at the moment, you have to go to the state in order to become licensed, and you also have to go to the state in order to get the license revoked. So essentially, they operate as a middleman adjudication system between the partnership and the marriage. So I think that can be done by the church, and it doesn't need to be done by the state at all. It's never been necessary, nor is that something which is traditional. That is not a traditional thing which is done.
So if you separated it, right? So if you separated this into like a religious ceremony, and you had the states not involved in marriages at all. However, the state would still monitor couples for the purposes of taxation. So what would that look like? And could
The
couples
same thing it looks like right now.
No, because it's not
the same thing it looks like right now.
It's no longer a religious thing. It's no longer for the dignity of family. There's in legal precedent, a lot of marriage issues have to do with the dignity of families and creating the best society possible for the modern era.
Yeah, it's encouraging birth rates, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, I agree.
You're just going to interrupt me every time I talk and then complain if I interrupt you.
Okay, well, give me the signal when you're done, because it sounds like you're winding down. So
it's when I'm not talking. That's when I'm talking.
Let's see if that ever happens, but go ahead.
I could see why you complain about no fault divorces. I could see you wanting to grasp onto your wife as best as you can. I could see that she's probably running the
Oh, great. What a swell argument. Are you going to get to an argument? Because I'm still waiting for one.
Dude, I lost my
I'm sure you did.
Go ahead. Say what you were going to say, because you wanted to interrupt me so much.
Well, wait a second. You're saying that just a minor interruption, you derailed your entire train of thought?
You guys are both doing the same thing right now. Just get to your points, both of you, for the love of God.
You get to your point, Andrew.
My point is that you don't need to have the state involved in marriage at all.
Okay. So how is that system going to work? So now the state is not involved in marriages, but however, you're saying the state is still involved in couples being taxed differently than single people. So then couples will also want to be triples for tax purposes, maybe business partners, and then also maybe father and daughter maybe would want for tax purposes to live together. So will that be allowed by the state? Does this change things? Because it's no longer a sexual family dynamic. So I'm curious as how this is now going to work in your new society. And also
so here, I'll answer. Okay, sorry, go ahead. I thought you were done talking. My bad. Go ahead. You got the floor.
I'll let you answer that.
Okay, so first of all you're talking about here is changing one position, which is that the government itself no longer issues marriage licenses. They don't need to do it. For the purposes of taxation, they still are going to track who's cohabitating. They've always tracked who's cohabitating. We have the U.S. Census, which is great at doing this. You have Social Security numbers for your job. And if you want to have tax benefits and tax breaks and things like that, you could maybe engage in what's called a civil union. There's states which have had those for an awful long time, and you can do that. That's how homosexuals used to be able to get married, is through a civil union. They would get all of the same protections of a marriage without it being the actual sacrament of marriage. And then if you want to have no-fault divorce for your secular marriages, fine. But I think that you should probably push for some kind of sacrament or some kind of value to marriage if you want people to remain married. I can demonstrate this by the fact that religious people get divorced less, yet they seem to be happier in their marriages.
Do you know the legal distinctions between a civil union and a marriage?
I couldn't hear you. Say that again.
Do you know the legal distinctions between a civil union and a marriage?
Depends on the state.
Okay, but for instance, when a spouse dies in a civil union, do they receive the the estate or part of the estate, especially in a homestead state like
I
Florida?
mean, let's assume for a second none of them could. You, as the secularist who introduced civil unions instead of marriage, could easily ratify that for whatever secular framework that you wanted. So whatever non-religious framework that you wanted to add in and call it a civil union, another than religious union, you could add in whatever the hell you wanted.
So this is essentially marriage, but with a different terminology.
Whatever you want to call it. We wouldn't recognize it as marriage. We would recognize
but
you as like people.
Why don't churches just have their own ceremony that they don't recognize the state?
They do. The state doesn't recognize that ceremony.
Don't Catholics not recognize the state divorce anyway? So they already do this.
So I'm going to explain this so that you understand. The state itself does not recognize religious marriage by itself. So the state itself still has to issue a license, and you are still subject to the state for the purposes of you being able to get divorced. You understand the distinction there? Well, there's a huge distinction.
Not religiously, because if you're Catholic, the priest still won't sanctify your divorce, so you won't be considered divorced. And I know this because my dad's Catholic, and there was issue with my grandma with divorce, whatever, and her
Catholics
partner.
are really weird about that stuff. I agree.
So even though her partner wanted a divorce from his wife to marry my grandma, he couldn't. He had to wait for her to die in order to marry my grandma, even though he was legally divorced, because the church wouldn't recognize it. So that's already, your dream world already exists.
No, it doesn't. So first of all, the Catholic
church has a different
Catholic Church
of marriage than the state.
Stop. You're missing the point.
But the church did it.
You're missing the point. The enforcement arm's not the church. The enforcement arm is still the state. So he still had to go. Stop and let me finish. He still had to go and get divorced by the state, right?
I mean, if it was just religious.
Answer my question. Did he have to go to the state and get divorced?
No, because he had to wait for his wife to die, right?
You just got them saying that he got divorced, but he couldn't still leave the marriage because the Catholic Church wouldn't let him, right?
Right. So now you're asking.
Okay, so then he did have to go to the state, and the state did have to give him a divorce.
Either way, he had to wait for his wife to die.
Because he was adhering to his religious institution, but he still had to go to the state, Lauren, to get a divorce, Lauren. You just said he did.
If he wanted to separate the state ties of his marriage, which is what the state would be regulating in this civil union system that you're setting up anyway.
No, the state wouldn't be regulating anything with religious marriage. Why would they be regulating it?
So now you want the church to dictate the separation, which would be the cause of these civil unions, which would
I want the church to it. If you're going to do a sacramental,
when I'm asking a question,
I'm answering your question. Yes. The answer is yes. I want the church to adjudicate that.
Have you heard of the separation of church and state? Have you heard of this concept before?
This would separate the church and state. What are you talking about?
Wait, hold on. I think we're going in circles a little bit here. I just want to try and keep us back on track. So I guess I'm not necessarily cutting anyone off here, but like, Andrew, like, if you can already get married via the church without being legally binding currently, then what are you complaining about? Why did you get married for a legal purpose? Which I assume you did. I'm not sure your particular situation. Like, if you're saying that you could just do a ceremony with the church, right? That's what you're wanting, yes?
No, currently priests cannot marry you without the state.
Well, I mean, but it would be like you could have that within like your religious practice. It just wouldn't be legally binding, correct?
No, you really can't have that because.
But that's what you want, yes?
Yes, there's laws that make that illegal. So usually a priest.
Or make it illegal?
A priest, yes. A priest often in most states, I think, actually has to have the authority of the state and issue you a marriage license in order to marry you.
Are you talking about bigamy laws?
No, I'm not talking about bigamy laws.
Well, I just don't understand why you can't just have that done.
What law are you referring to? Because I've never heard of a law that a religious ceremony couldn't take place without the state's permission.
You can
literally never heard of this law.
So you can make that, but it's not a recognized marriage. The state should still have to recognize.
Not recognized
by the state, but you don't want it to be recognized by the state.
The state, stop. The state should still have to recognize the marriage. That doesn't mean that they have the authority to adjudicate it.
Stop proving I'm making bad points. Stop.
What
You
would
are
that,
making bad points.
What would that look like
No,
then?
you're the one making bad
What's
points.
okay? What's the
What
problem with
recognized
my
by the
argument?
state mean if it has
Give
no
me an
actual,
actual
values from the
problem
state?
with my argument. Let me frame it the
I
best
just
way I
don't understand
possibly
what your
can.
argument is. I'm trying to figure it out.
That's why I'll try to frame it as best I can. The state does not need to adjudicate religious marriage.
Okay.
However, the state should have to recognize religious
What does
marriage.
that mean?
It means that the state is going to have to recognize that you're married by the church and recognize the church's authority to be the adjudicator over the divorce portion
Okay,
of
but
it.
what does that mean in
I
practice?
just
Is it
explained
that your
it. How
last
stupid
name?
are you? Like, I just literally
You
explained
really
it.
didn't explain that at
How-
all. So are
how-
you saying that
how
they
much
would
more
have
can I
like
explain
the
this?
Just
recognition of
let
like the
her
last
finish her
name?
question.
Yeah, like
Can you
like you're
start
talking
your
about like
question
the
over?
last name
Well, I
acknowledgement.
just keep
Are we
answering
talking
the
about
same
tax
question.
benefits? Like what are we? You did not answer that question at all.
Okay, so as far as it comes to what? Tax benefits, things like this?
Yeah.
Is that what you mean when you say
Perfect
recognize?
Yeah,
Yes, that
well,
is what I'm asking.
whatever the benefits are that the state's going to offer up or whatever. Yes, it needs to
So
be
you
a
want the church
recognized
to
marriage.
be involved in adjudication of
Mhm.
state issues involving
Well, it's not
taxation.
just a state
It is-
issue. The state
the
is a
tax
composition
part
of people.
Sure, it's
Stop,
both exactly,
stop.
but it
The
is
state's
still
a composition of people, Lauren. Okay, so
Yes,
people should be
she knows
able
that.
to be allowed to have their own adjudicators separate of the state, and they traditionally always have. So I don't know what you're talking
Traditionally
about.
Always have since what
Uh-huh.
time period?
Throughout most of history, the church has been the
So, In
dominion.
the United States
And
ever?
the church has been the dominion over divorce throughout most of human history. These are religious
Until
sacraments.
when?
These are not secularist sacraments. That
Well,
only
okay.
began during the Enlightenment period when they really started to push through laws when it came to
Okay.
divorce in order to promote the health and welfare of the individuals inside of these nations. But
When in the United States
Mhm.
did this happen?
I don't know what the exact dates were.
Never. Yeah.
No, listen. Did the United States
Yeah.
change from no fault divorce?
That happened, but that's completely different than
Okay, so
adjudication
hang
by
on.
the church.
Before then, if you're going backwards, it's ridiculous for you to expect me to know the exact date that this change
Never
shifted drastically. So yes, it has happened. I just told you traditionally
goodness.
the church has always been the adjudicator
Not
for
in
who
the
got
United
married and who
States.
got divorced.
Not in the
So,
Yes.
United States.
Who do you think founded the United States, Lauren? Who do you think founded it? Who got here first?
Like in what sense?
The
Like
Native
you
Americans.
say-
Who got to
who
America
landed on the
first?
United? Like
Yes.
okay, Vikings are probably. Are you talking about the country? Like I'm so confused. It's like
In
when
the
someone
United-
asks me
the
where I'm
United
from.
States,
Like, I'm
the
from
United States had
California, but
the
my
United States had
parents are,
Puritans, Lauren. The United States had Puritans who got here, Puritan Christians. Okay,
Mhm.
they were not appealing to the state because the church was the state. Okay, they
Okay.
were the
And
state.
did they put
Well-
up the Constitution of the United States?
No, that came later.
Oh, okay. So it's
Mhm.
not the United States never, right, had the church adjudicating.
You mean the
when
same United
tax
States that
benefits
claims
went
all men
up.
are created equal? Doesn't say anything about women being created equal. Didn't allow women to have suffrage. Didn't allow women to have any of those things. Didn't allow women to vote because they weren't stakeholders. Also made sure that they had limited access to property.
love
Aren't
the
these all
pivot.
feminist? Aren't these
Stakeholders.
all feminist propaganda?
What a
I
pivot.
do
So
the
That
same
is
thing.
your overall
Okay.
argument.
What? You're asking me to give
Andrew.
you a precision date for something. I don't know that off the
No,
top
it
of my head.
never happened.
You're doing a
I'm
really good
telling
job
you,
of not
there's
actually
never
saying.
a
What?
period
Tell me
in
what
United
never
States
happened. Let's make
history-
sure.
There's
What?
never a period in United States history when the church was adjudicating marriages for the purposes of taxation or any other legal benefits.
Well, no, that's not true. The entire 1700s, the state had limited involvement in marriage. What are you talking about? The
Okay, so
What
there
is
was no
Protestant-
tax
various
benefit.
Protestant sects. There wasn't hardly any taxes in the 1700s, Lauren.
I'm
Like, what are
sorry.
you-
Do
what are
you
you
know
talking
what the Revolutionary War was paid or was done over? What are you talking about?
Oh my God. How dumb are you? What does it have to do with anything?
Well, I'm asking you. Do you know why the Revolutionary War was started?
I know what the propagandist said in the Revolutionary War.
Okay,
The United
so what
States
do you think it was?
propagandists. I think that the war, well, regardless of why I think the war was fought, that really has no bearing or merit on any of this.
No taxation without representation.
That was propaganda.
In case you forgot.
That was patriot
No
propaganda.
shit, it was patriot propaganda. Exactly. Didn't mean it didn't happen. You understand? Propaganda doesn't mean that it's a lie.
Oh, great. Well, now we have tons of taxation with representation.
I
What a
mean,
wonderful,
wasn't
what a
the Tea
wonderful outcome.
Party, wasn't like the whole Tea Party thing
Wow, good
about
argument.
the tea being taxed too much? So you're telling us there's no taxes and this entire fucking country was founded
I didn't
on
say
that?
that. I just said there wasn't very many taxes, and I got to tell you that
Yeah, there
the
wasn't
purpose,
Literally, the entire reason was because there was too many
the
taxes.
purpose of merit. No, that wasn't the entire reason for the Revolutionary War. That's insane. You're talking about the Boston Tea Party, and you're talking about patriot propaganda, which happened. The patriot propaganda was necessary for the war effort.
Okay, I support my country. I
Good
don't
for you.
appreciate your bullshit here.
I'm mad that I'm siding with the liberals. I just want to say that. You made me, Andrew.
silly.
That's unfortunate. I'm even wearing a conservative shirt. Damn.
All right, let's redirect. We've covered.
No, let's not redirect. I'm not done yet. I want to know. I would like to know, when do you guys think the income tax started?
Okay, one question, and I want to redirect back to the additional.
Yeah, when do you think
What
it started?
amendment was that? I forget the amendment, but I should
It's okay for you to not know anything
Google
off
it
the top
if
of
you
your
want.
head, right? Yeah, go ahead, Google it.
17th
When
Amendment? Was it the 17th Amendment?
When did the income tax start?
1861.
What was it?
1861.
No.
Civil War prompted the first American income tax in 1861.
Yeah, okay, that was for the war effort. But the actual income tax that you have now, right, that started in the 1900s, just so you understand. The 1900s.
That was a good
So
history
now,
lesson.
as you move back, hang on. So now,
was it the 17th Amendment?
So I want to redirect back to the initial topic. We covered history quite enough. It's not related at all to the.
Yes, it is related.
How's it related?
Because we're talking about the history of marriage, Alex.
How's that related to the idea of why
divorce?
Divorces. Just give me like a simple
because
explanation.
in this particular case, what they're trying to say is that I have some kind of incoherent system, and yet I'm saying no, it's actually your system which is incoherent, which is leading to the maximum amount of divorces which we're having at the moment, right? Because specifically, specifically no fault divorce. So if you're looking at,
divorce rates are falling. Right?
Let me finish, Lauren.
Let me finish,
calm down, Lauren. So again, when you're looking at this, no fault divorce is a primary cause for why it is that women institute. So this is what the question is, right? Why do women have or institute so many divorces? Why are they petitioning so much for divorce? Things like this. It's actually really simple. It's because there's very limited penalty at all for women to go and petition the court for a divorce. They almost always win, and they almost always get more assets. This has been what has traditionally happened since no fault divorce was instituted. They usually get the kids, they usually get the house. It's a pretty bad deal for men. It's a big problem. That's why we got into all these other things.
Okay, let's just try to keep it on track with, you want to talk about the history of divorce or whatever, that's fine. But let's not get into like fucking income taxes and whatnot and like why the revolution happened. Like that's not really quite related. But yeah,
sure.
Did you know, fun fact, US divorce rates hit an all-time 50-year low? Isn't that a fun fact?
Because almost nobody's getting married. That's why.
So that's what you want. You don't want the secular people getting married.
You don't want secular people
how low tier you people are.
No, but you literally just said you didn't want the secular people getting married. So maybe those are the people who are not getting married.
Right. So what I want to do is shift people. I want to shift.
Definitely, because it's the religious people's job to get married.
So I want to shift. Yeah. So here's what you are seeing, though. You are seeing religious people stay married longer. They're happier longer. The more religious they are, the less likely they are to be divorced, the less likely a woman is to institute a divorce, all those great things. That's why I want to see more people move towards religion as a grounding for why they get married in the first place, as a sacrament, so they take it seriously, instead of secularists who make vows and then go, but I didn't like Johnny anymore because Johnny got fat, so I decided to go bang the neighbor, right? And then they go, well, there's no fault divorce, there's very little penalty for them. And so they institute a divorce. They push a divorce.
Men and women cheat at the same rates generally, so I don't really understand what that's going with. But do you really think that like you should just not ever have any reason to leave, or like is it do you actually believe in the fault divorces, or are you just saying that to be like annoying about it? Or do you believe that nobody should ever be divorced? I don't know what your position is on this.
Do you think
I'd like you
Steven
to clarify.
Crowder's wife should have been allowed to divorce him?
Great question.
If you have a show cause for abuse, actual physical abuse, or you have a show cause for infidelity or abandonment,
not emotional abuse,
or abandonment, right? I think that those are all good causes. When you're talking about things like emotional abuse, try to remember what your vows are, through better, through worse. Sometimes in marriage, you're going to have years, not months, not weeks, but years that might be really rough. They might be hard. Marriage is really hard. People shouldn't enter into marriage. They shouldn't enter into marriage unless they're prepared for all those hard times.
I don't disagree that marriage is hard. It's scary. I understand like that aspect of it. But like if somebody is abusing you and you have kids, like even if it's emotionally, why do you think that they wouldn't abuse your children? And on second question, I'll let you finish, or I'll let you answer in a second. But let me just finish my question real quick. Would you think that it is okay to leave a marriage if your partner, whether it is, man, wife, whatever, is abusing your kids? Do you think that's fair to leave that marriage? Or more than anything, I would even think like maybe it's like your duty that you should, for the good of your children.
If your partner is abusing your children, should you be able to leave them? Is that what you're asking?
I was a two-parter, basically saying like if somebody is going to
just do one part at a time.
Okay, that's fair. We'll start with the first part. If somebody is going to abuse you, like emotionally or physically, why do you think that they wouldn't? I'm saying both.
But I'm not saying both.
Do you think that they're not going? Well, I need to clarify.
Okay.
Would you not think that they would do that to your children?
If you have a spouse who's physically abusive, I think that
physically
they probably
or
would.
Emotionally.
Yeah. Well, the problem with emotional abuse is that it's highly subjective, and I don't know exactly what it means. So I know what physical abuse means, and I think that all of us would agree with what physical abuse is.
Well, you think like gaslighting would be like a
stop me. Let me answer.
Go ahead.
Okay, I think all of us would agree what physical abuse is. I think all of us would agree what infidelity is. I think all of us would agree what abandonment is. Not sure all of us would agree on what emotional abuse is.
Okay, well, I guess I'll like try and clarify then. It's something like somebody who's gaslighting you constantly, or like, I mean, like you saw the Steven Crowder stuff, right? Like, do you think that what he was doing to her was not emotionally abusive?
Maybe. So what?
Well, I'm saying, how is that? What do you mean? So what? So what if the kids are witnessing that throughout like a 10-year marriage? And you think that will affect the way the kids?
That's different. So now you're talking
that's what we're asking.
So now you're asking about some elongated pattern of behavior that's like never ending or something like this, rather than an isolated incident. So here's what I'll say, right? As you guys kind of giggle and scoff, which I find amusing. All of you, every single one of you, have been mean to a man, right? Or have had men be mean to you. Every single one of you have had engagements with men, especially whoever you're dating or something like this.
I'm sure we all have.
Where the guy's been a shithead or you've been a shithead to the guy. But that didn't mean that you broke up the relationship over that. A marriage is something that's should be much more difficult to break up than just some relationship you have with a boyfriend. And the thing is that human. Hang on. Let me finish. And I'll turn it over. I promise. But emotionally, if you're talking about emotional abuse, I think that that's really difficult for us to agree on what that's going to be, because I think a person could maybe even emotionally abuse you for 3 or 4 years and then stop doing it. Marriage is work, or whatever you consider to be emotional abuse, or them. Marriage is work. Relationships are work. Relationship dynamics are work. Now, let me ask you this. Before you guys ask me another question, who here besides me is married? Raise your hand.
Oh, wow. You researched us.
Oh, you're married, Angela?
Yeah.
Why is that are you lying, Angela? Just curious.
No. Why would I lie? What do I gain from lying?
I don't know. I'm just curious.
Her of lying because she's a woman.
I like my green card, guys. I gotta like my green card. Leave me alone. Yes, I am married.
And you're not going through a divorce?
No. Why would no? I would like
Okay.
to stay in America, so no, I'm not going through a divorce.
I don't know. You just raised your hand really slow. It was weird. Just saying.
Well, I didn't know there was like a follow through question, and I was like, all right, what's going on?
Well,
here?
I'm just
But yeah.
saying, like, before you guys are so quick to say anything about what's emotional abuse or what isn't, maybe
Well,
you should
You have to
have a
be
marriage.
married to know which one is
Angela,
what.
you
Well,
know
my
what it
problem
isn't.
with what we're talking about is like I understand what you're saying, but if you're married and then maybe you're comparing it to like a modern marriage where people get married within like the first 2 years of meeting, but like if you've been with someone long enough and you're saying that this behavior will slowly go away, if the behavior goes
Mhm.
away, whether somebody is just ignoring the situation, it's only going to get worse. But I don't see how a guy can be emotionally abusive and then just slowly not be emotionally abusive anymore. I don't see like how if you're in a relationship
Right.
with somebody,
What's
I don't see-
emotional? So let's start with this then. If it's going to be pedantic, tell me what you think emotional abuse is.
like,
She gave an example of gaslighting.
Mhm.
I would say depriving of funds. I would say
Why is depriving of funds emotional abuse?
so. For instance, I know somebody who her husband would go out on trips.
I don't
and
care
cut
about an
off-
anecdote. I care about the argument. Why
I'm
would
giving you an
depriving
example.
somebody?
She's giving you an
Anecdotes are not an
example.
argument. Give me an
It's not
argument.
an argument. It's an example. You asked for an
I
example. She's
didn't
giving you
ask. I
one.
asked specifically for an argument. So what I want to
I'm
know,
going to answer the way that
what-
I was going to answer.
what I
and
want,
I'd like
what I
for you
want to
give
know
me-
specifically is an argument for why it
Yeah.
is that deprivation of funds is emotional abuse.
Okay, I'm going to give you an example
Now, of course.
of
Okay.
how deprivation of funds is emotional abuse. I know someone whose husband would go on trips, and even though they had a newborn baby and she was in college, he would cut off their credit card when he would go on trips, and and he wouldn't tell her how long. And sometimes it would be days, sometimes it would be months. She would not know, and so she would just have to survive on the food in her closet, like food that she had in her pantry. Eventually, she would have to go to her mom and ask for food. It was emotionally abusive.
Okay. Well, I know a couple, and what they do is he deprives her of money because he thinks
Hold
that
on.
she spends. Hang on. No, you hold on. I just went through your
Did
whole
that
diatribe.
answer
Make-
your
Ruby's
question?
gonna
Just
make
went
it-
through your
Did
entire.
that-
No,
did
it
that
doesn't.
answer your
I'm giving you a
question?
counter example of how it doesn't. So I know everybody in the exact same type of situation, the exact same type of way. Just the opposite is true. Refute it.
Okay.
Refute. Give me a
What do you mean?
refutation.
Well,
What do you
asked.
mean?
So the deprivation of funds and
Go ahead.
whatever my anecdotal scenario is good. There we go. So
give
now we're
me
at
an
a stalemate.
example. Can you give me. I don't understand the exact.
I know you don't
opposite.
understand.
Yeah, 'cause
So
you're not
he's doing a deprivation of funds, and it's actually good because it works for their marriage instead of she doesn't like it, I guess. You know, whatever the
Well, now I'm
anecdote
curious.
is.
What is your anecdote? I'm actually
Yeah.
curious.
So the
Can you
anecdote
tell?
would be that she spent too much. She spends too much money. Because she spends too much money, he cut off the credit card payment. So he deprives her of funds. That's good and healthy for the couple. I've known couples where this has happened to them. Here's an anecdote for you. There you
So
go.
I give you an
Refute it.
example of
I don't
abuse.
think
Okay, well then
terrible
that's
anecdote.
probably not. Yeah, well then that's probably not a if it's something that like she has an issue and
Well,
then
no,
they
it's
like
actually
agree to be
emotional abuse to
together.
him, huh? How dare she make it so that that poor guy has to freeze her credit cards? He'd love to share the
I
money
say
with her.
You might be
He would
right
love
about
to.
it. That's fine, but that doesn't discount what her argument was and what
What's
she
her
was trying to use
argument?
as an
Her
example.
argument was an
Talking-
anecdote, not
Do
an
you
argument.
remember like
Well, it's an
eighth grade-
example.
It's
what
it's
year
an
did you take
anecdote.
geometry, Andrew?
Those
Like
things are not
basic
mutually
geometry.
exclusive.
What?
I'm wondering what year you took basic
What the fuck does
geometry.
that have to do with the
Because we
price of
struggle
tea
with
and the
logic
Boston Tea
structure.
Party? Geometry is.
Yeah.
I struggle with logic structures because of
Yeah.
geometry.
Well, not because it's not geometry's fault.
Okay, Lauren, let me ask you a question. There's
Mhm.
3 laws of logic. Can you name them for me?
What do you mean 3 laws of logic? So are you saying, like, for instance, if A, then B?
Yeah, the
That
3
difference-
laws. 3 laws of logic. There's only 3. Can you name even one of them?
Look it up.
Yeah, it's like if A, then B, if
Oh.
I don't remember. Like you would
Yeah.
have to know this off the top.
Maybe you
of-
should have stayed in geometry, I guess.
Identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle. Like I mean,
You
like
should have stayed in geometry.
you're just
Lauren.
They're
you
like-
realize how dumb that you make yourself look, Andrew, when you
Yeah,
just
yeah, I made myself look
Yeah.
dumb, that's for
I
sure.
can just easily Google. Like, you're really gonna think like it makes her look stupid that you're just like, hey, name like you're basically doing the same logical argument of like the
That she did.
oh yeah,
Just-
you're a
just
fan
doing
of
the
this
same
band.
thing back to
Name
her
3
that she did to
songs.
me. Got
Name
it.
3 songs from the band. Like it's like we could just look it
Wendy.
up.
That's what.
If
Hang on.
B, then
She.
C,
So she asked
then
me.
if A, then
She.
C.
So she
No,
asked
I'm
me
writing
when
it
did
down.
you fail? When did you fail
I got a
geometry
perfect score
for your
in
logical
geometry.
argumentation
Okay,
structure?
so
Yeah, I got a
so
perfect score in geometry. I went on to get a perfect score on
All
the
right, all right,
ACT
all right,
math.
all
I
right,
went
all
on
right,
to get
all
a
right.
perfect score in
Let's
the
get back on the
GRE
rails
in
here.
math, and then I went on to be a math major.
What does
So
geometry have to do with the logical structure, Lauren?
there's
Of an
logical structures
argument.
that you seem to be failing. So, for instance, when I gave the anecdotal example of how
All right, I'm
deprivation
going to the
of
bathroom while you
funds
guys are having this.
can be, and this is actually one of the logic structures you were just talking about. So maybe you know them off the top of your head, but you don't know how to apply them, which seems to be an issue for you.
Oh,
If I give an
I need
example of
geometry
how
for that.
deprivation of funds can be abuse, you giving an
Mhm.
example of how deprivation of funds could not be abuse is not
Mhm.
discrediting the fact that my example was still an
Right.
example.
Both are non sequiturs, Lauren.
It
That was
wasn't
my
a
point.
So
Yeah,
going back
they're
to
both non sequiturs.
going back to your
They're not
anecdote to
arguments.
how to cut off the funds, like off of your example for someone who's married, is that what you would do for your marriage if if your wife was spending too much money just to cut off the funds, just to like teach her a lesson? But what would you do?
Well, it's not teaching a lesson, but I have children. She has children with me. I think that it's very important that if one of the partners is being irresponsible with money, that it's a duty to, in fact, to cut off funding so that they're no longer irresponsible with money. And I think that oftentimes, especially if you look at consumer spending, women are responsible for upwards of 70 to 80% of all consumer spending. They spend a lot of money. So the thing
Oh my
is
God,
that
that's still not a
oftentimes
fair
It's a
statistic.
misleading stat because women spend money on
Yeah.
a lot of things like household stuff and everything.
I
more.
agree. Listen,
So
I agree. What I'm saying to you, though, is that generally speaking, they spend a lot of money. So you're going to often find that when financial disputes come up inside of marriages, it's not usually the man who's overspending. They do. Don't get me wrong. It happens. But oftentimes it's a woman who's overspending. And so it falls under the duty and purview of the man to say, no, you can't overspend. And if he's the breadwinner and he's the provider for the family, why would it be problematic for him to say that this money needs to be used in a way I deem responsible for the family?
So then you
And why don't
encourage
they do
women
the
to get
shopping?
jobs?
right, but I wanted to. So you're saying basically to cut it off, but wouldn't that be a red flag as to why she randomly started to aggressively spend on this money? Because if someone who's married and their personality drastically changes, wouldn't that be a reason to find the root of why instead of just saying I'm going to cut this off and starting the beginning of why a relationship fails because of the lack of communication?
Yeah. So I think you're conflating two different things. So if you're asking me, do you think that we should get to the root of the problem of why the woman is spending so much money? I would say sure. But that really doesn't negate the point that if she is spending too much money and the dude puts a freeze on the money, that he seems to be justified in doing so.
I don't think it's justified because you're not necessarily stopping the situation. You're just putting it on pause, and it's only going to find other ways in the relationship
Well,
to
it's
get
both
worse.
and is what I'm saying, Angela. It's both and. So you can put a stop on it while you get to the root of the problem.
But I was going off of your example, and it just seemed like you didn't really.
My example is both and. You can do both things at one time. You don't have to do one or the other. You can do both, and then you can do the other thing as well. So again, marriage is work. If you're going to be working on your marriage, you have to freeze the funds. Obviously, you're going to be working with your wife on why it is that she needs to be spending this money in the correct manner, this type of thing. I think
That
that's
doesn't
totally
change
reasonable.
the fact that depriving funds can, maybe not always, but can be a form of emotional abuse. And you asked what other forms of emotional abuse are there other than gaslighting. I gave an example of how depriving funds can be emotional abuse. And so now I'm asking, you're saying that only the church should be allowed to determine whether or not that's emotional abuse and that shouldn't be adjudicated by the court.
Can holding out on sex be emotional abuse?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay. So
yeah.
can basically everything be emotional abuse just depending on the subjective interpretation of one partner? Isn't that really what's true? That everything under the sun
Which is
could be.
somewhat why court systems and part of legislation when they decided to make no-fault divorce available was because so much of this court system was wrapped up in determining these subjective arguments of he said, she said in the first place.
Well, no, not just that, but there was also a push from a feminist arm in the United States,
Have you read?
especially under the Reagan administration. Yes, I've read. You should also read a book called Occult Feminism.
You didn't
It was
even know
written
what I
by
was
my
gonna say.
wife, and it'll go over all of this, just so you know. And yes, that was a shameless plug.
Sponsored.
Have you read
We
the
love Rachel.
justifications that legislators have made for the reason in which they have implemented no-fault divorces in their state and why other legislators in their various states have still kept some sort of at-fault divorce available for those who want it. Covenant marriages.
Those justification for no-fault divorce is not even recent. So there you'll find justifications throughout feminist literature going back all the way to the early. Listen, I'm answering your question.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am. Let me finish. You'll find justification literature going back all the way to the 1800s for an attempt to push no-fault divorce, or being able to get divorced for no reason at all because you want to. It's part of the women's liberation movement. They've been pushing for this forever. Under Reagan, there was all sorts of different justifications which were pushed for it. But here's the thing. Reagan started in California by doing this, and then he made it nationwide. It was a huge mistake. How did civilization survive, Lauren, pre-Reagan instituting no-fault divorce? How? I mean, why didn't everything just blow up?
Okay, so I love how you pivot from answering my question and give me another question, but I'm just going to repeat my question.
It's like the most thorough way I could have answered it.
What the legislators wrote.
Which legislator?
There's various legislators.
Yeah, give me one name. You don't know one name. You asked me a question. If I've read,
you like that band name 3
songs. So under the footnotes of
give me one name.
Oh, just let her answer the.
Just answer mine. Give me a name, and then I can answer the question. You don't know the name.
Why
is she even asking me the question?
I'll look it. I'll be the researcher.
Which Supreme Court justice wrote that? I couldn't give you the name. I've read Loving v. Virginia. I couldn't give you the name of the Supreme. Do you know the Supreme Court justice who wrote
Have I read the justifications of the people whose names you don't know? This is big brain stuff, Lauren.
I'm asking under the footnotes of all of these laws, for instance, the creation of the covenant law. You could look up why the legislator wrote that into the law, and they give their rationale. And I'm asking.
That's nice of them. No, I haven't read everything that everybody's ever written, Lauren. Yes.
Yeah. Then why are you expecting her to have done that?
Because because if she applies the standard to me of have you read X, but she can't even tell me the person whose name I should know.
It doesn't matter.
Nina,
you're just you're the type of person who thinks that you have to know every little aspect of philosophy to understand the actual concepts.
If you ask me question X, Nina, if you ask me a question, have you read what was your question? X person has said, and I say what's X person's name, and you say I don't know, your credibility goes to zero.
No, that's not true.
Because people forget names. That's very silly. That's very silly.
There's plenty of things that I've read that I don't know the author's name. And if you haven't read a lot of things without knowing the author's name, I'd be curious how much you've read in your life, which appears to be
books.
What exactly was your question? You know what? I will Google it. I will Google it for you, my guy. If you don't know the name either, I don't know. I will Google it for you. What was your question that you were getting all pissed off and trying to pivot and distract from her line of thought to answer?
You don't remember the question that you're going to Google?
Do you want me to repeat the question?
I was looking up something else.
By all means.
Okay, so the legislators who wrote, for instance, Georgia. Does Georgia have covenant divorces? Okay, I don't know. The various states in which have covenant divorces, they typically write a treatise as to why they created a covenant divorce, or why they got rid, or why they changed the legislature. I'm wondering if you've read any of these treatises.
No.
Okay, so you don't know any of the legislators' justifications for getting rid of at-fault divorces.
Well, no, that's not what I said. There's more to a legislation process than a treatise. So there's all sorts of political justifications which are done on the national and localized level by several different authors. Oftentimes, legislation like this is not even drafted by the person who writes it. It's drafted by external parties, Lauren. So no, I may have read quite a bit on it, but that doesn't mean I've read an example of a treatise directly.
So, okay, if you've read quite a bit on it, can you please give us some of the reasons and why these legislators chose to get rid of at-fault divorces?
Where? And which legislature?
Let's just say New York.
Okay. And which legislature? Under who? Who introduced the legislation?
I'm asking you why.
And I'm just asking you to give me the answer so that I can answer your question. You don't know
which specific legislature.
Yeah, so don't ask me stupid questions, Lauren. Stop asking stupid questions, Lauren.
Definitely comes off like you know what you're talking about. You're not just definitely, Andrew.
I'm asking you a broad question. And
Yeah, I get it.
You're asking me to pin it down to a specific person. I'm asking you, what is the rationale legislators gave for getting rid of at-fault divorces?
Where and which legislature,
Sure,
Lauren?
why not New York? New York, for example.
Okay, which legislator?
Literally any of them.
Any. You're saying that you've read some of these decisions and it's a more broad thing, it's more general, and there's these public, it wasn't just.
Are you asking me if I know? So I just want to make sure I get this right. If you're asking me, Andrew, do you know a specific legislative body in New York and their justifications inside of New York for why they did X thing? The answer to this particular question is no. What's your point?
Can you give me any rationale that these legislators gave for any legislator in any jurisdiction gave for changing the law to no-fault divorce? Sorry, to at-fault divorce to no-fault divorce.
Yes, I can give you what the Reagan administration
Why
said.
was that so fucking difficult for you? Okay, go ahead.
Well, next time, just be either concise with your question or make it make sense.
You guys don't gotta do this whole thing. Just let's just stay unfocused.
So
go ahead, Andrew.
Anyway, yeah. So the Reagan administration, they pushed this in California, and much of the justification for it came from literally the liberal arts section of California, liberal universities. And what they were pushing at the time was that women were subject to all sorts of different types of abuses, and that the patriarchal system in which they were living under were oppressive to them. And this was a huge push in California. And as they say, as goes California, so goes the rest of the United States. So yes, those were many of the justifications which were given at the time for why it was that we needed no-fault divorce. But there's other far more specific examples going even further back in history, as feminists have been pushing this for a long time.